Hey guys, welcome back to AP Gaming, or AP Wargaming, rather. Let's try that again. Hey guys, welcome back to AP Wargaming and Terrain. This week we are doing the last part of the ruined building build, which you can see back here in the corner. You know what? Let's just bring it up. Here. Ta-da! Haven't quite finished the snow terrain yet. I'm doing the intro here before I actually do that piece of the video. So just ignore that. So there's a lot of new faces in the crowd this week. We gained about 40 new subscribers in just about 4 or 5 days, and I wanted to thank one of my subscribers for posting my video up on an international Facebook page, which subsequently got me those new subscribers. So Peter, shout out to you, man. Not gonna try to pronounce your last name, I don't want to butcher it. So let's go ahead and go down to the table and let's get this started. Alright guys, so first step in the second part of this ruined building is we're gonna seal everything. Now how we're gonna do that is we're gonna take some Mod Podge that is mixed with black paint. Now if you've ever watched any of the BMC stuff, this is basically the same thing. All we're really doing is sealing this styrofoam. Now this is a step that we need to do because instead of trying to paint this entire thing by hand with our gray, what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna get some spray paint and we're gonna do it real quick and simple, and it's gonna dry faster so we can get that step out of the way real fast. But first we have to do this, otherwise the spray paint will eat our styrofoam, which we don't want that. That's not a look we're going for. So this is an easy step. I'm not going to show you how to do this. Really just get a big brush, some water, a little bit of water, and just start painting this stuff on until we've got full coverage. Now I'm not going to do the floor. There's no reason for that. That'll be fine being spray painted, and we're not going to do the ground out here either. If it's pink, we're painting it. So let's get ahead with that. When I get done, I'll come back. Okay guys, so now that we're done with that and we have this beautiful black blob of a castle situation going on, now what we're going to do next is we're gonna start making the second floor and the third floor. So what we're gonna need is coffee stir sticks. Now you could use popsicle sticks or tongue depressors if you want, but I find that the thickness of these is perfect for a floorboard at a 28mm scale. It just looks better to me, and they're a lot thinner, unlike popsicle sticks, which are a little bit thicker, and it just looks abnormal to me. So we're going to be using these as our floorboards. Now on the other part, you're going to need balsa wood, little 1/4-inch key stock balsa wood, or a square dowel rod, however you want to say that. And we're going to cut, how many we got here? We're going to cut 5 pieces. Now the reason for 5 of them, these 3 are going to go in our corners, and then one right here, because if you see here where that 4th one would be, the wall is falling apart. So we're gonna have to, because it would be like right here, so we're just gonna make this with only 3 of them and we're going to use some of our bits and pieces to make it look like that fourth one that should be there is part of our rubble piles that's all over the place. Now the other two out of the 5 that you cut, these are going to be what we glue our floorboards onto. I feel like I don't need to show you how I'm going to do this, but I probably will. This is a 3-inch section right here, so I know that these are going to fit because they're 3 inches. And then making the floor out of the popsicle sticks, or the coffee stirrers, we're just cutting 3-inch pieces. Now the only question there is how you want the floorboards to be. Do you want them to be running like this or running like this? Now I personally want them running like this so I can tear them apart and make them look like they've been broken from the walls falling apart. So we're gonna do that. I'll probably throw in a little bit of snippet of me putting those together, and then we'll see you when we're done with that, and we'll move on from there. Okay guys, so we got the second floor done here. Now I wanted to talk real quick about how we're gonna line this up. So from the back side here, you see how I have a line right here? All I did was I took this, just dropped it on here, and then traced a line. Because when they're setting in that tower, they're gonna set like this. So that's gonna keep us right up against the wall back there, and then right up against these 2 pillars, or this pillar. So it looks like it's nailed together. If somebody is inclined enough to lean down and actually look inside of your tower, which there are people out there that will do that kind of stuff. And so now we're just gonna take some snips. If you don't have any snips, you can use a knife, but I would recommend you wait until everything is completely dry and then go really slow and just multiple passes in order to cut it if you're using a knife. But since I'm using this, I don't need to wait for it to dry. Well, at least not completely. And I'm just gonna start snipping all these off. So I'm gonna do that, and we'll be right back. We'll talk about how we're gonna tear this thing up and make it look like it's falling apart. Alright guys, so while we let everything else dry, which, by the way, we did both floors at the same time. Might as well. We're doing it, so we might as well just do both of them at the same time. For the other floor, it's the same exact steps, except we only need 2 of the support beams instead of 3. And that is because right here on the wall where it's gonna be, that 3rd support beam probably would be really messed up. So when we go into tearing apart those floors, we'll cut another piece of balsa wood, and I'll show you how to tear that apart to make it look like it got nicked up and tore apart by the rocks, so it looks like it fits where it's supposed to be. Now, this part, we are going to take some scrap XPS, 1/2 inch, 1.5 inch, whatever you have, it doesn't matter. Because now we're gonna make the void space for our rubble piles. Which are rubble piles, you know, these fancy little piles over here that I have saved from all of this that we're been tearing apart. So this is pretty simple, and that is, I'll show you one of the pieces I've already made. We're just gonna cut it down because that's basically where it's gonna go. And what these are for is we're gonna glue those where they're at, and then we're gonna take some plaster and we're gonna cover it in there so we can fill up all the little gaps in the flooring part and the walls and get it to where it looks like it belongs there. And then after it dries, we're going to cover it in PVA glue, and we're going to use all of our rubble crap that we've been saving, and we're going to make it look like it's a big pile of rubble, even though it's really just a little bit of stuff put on top of a big void space. So we're not using a whole bunch of the stuff. And I mean, does it make sense? It makes sense. Anyway, I'm sure I'm just having a terrible time with English right now. Anyways, let's go ahead and I'll show you how to do one of these. So it's really this simple. We just want to bevel the edges. Now, because this is a true flat piece, and I know that we were gonna stick it up against a wall, we're not gonna mess with that side. But we are gonna mess with this side. See, it's already starting to come together. It's starting to look like kind of like that one over there. And that's it. It took like 30 seconds to make this. And we don't need it to be perfect. It doesn't have to be super rounded. Like, it could be jagged and whatever, it doesn't matter. Because we're gonna take some plaster and we're gonna cover it. I actually have another piece of rubble that I am working on. Now see, underneath this big pile right here, that's just a piece of XPS. We just cut it up. And then I took this plaster and I smeared it all over the place. And now you can see that there's no gap, there's no defining line that makes this look like another piece. And once we have this, you know, sanded out and smoothed over just a little bit, which I may or may not do. It doesn't really matter if you do or if you don't, because we are gonna cover this with all of our rubble and our aggregate and everything like that. So once this is like this and it's all dry, we're just gonna cover it with PVA glue and just start throwing things at it, really. We're probably only gonna take a few small pieces of like our balsa wood and some of our flooring bits and place them strategically to make it look like part of the floor and the wall and stuff. And like this one, you see how that one's all tore up and jagged and everything. Now I'm going to show you how to do that, because this right here is what I want to do on that other ruin, in that this one spot over here where the wall's all messed up. So go ahead and make yourself like, I don't know, five or 10 of these in varying different sizes. And, you know, go ahead and make some that actually have a cutout that fit right around certain spots. Just do whatever you think looks good. There's no right or wrong with this. You can have the whole thing filled with rubble as far as I'm concerned, if that's what you want. Now me personally, I will probably do maybe 5 to 7 of these rubble piles on this, because I do want it to look like the building's basically fallen in on itself. However, I do want to have playable space for miniatures to go in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna finish up making all of my rubble piles for this tower. I'm gonna get them glued down, and then we'll be right back and we'll move on with the next step. Okay guys, so we've got our rubble piles down. Okay. Just glued them on there randomly where I thought rubble would be. Now, you can see right inside here, I added little ones to the bottoms of these pillars. So that was the whole reason why I had to glue them in, because I needed to make sure that I could get those glued in before we do all of the plaster and stuff. And I also added a little one right here, right in the window, just for, you know, for reasons. So now that we've gotten this part done, and I want to keep moving forward before I actually do the plaster, because it's only about 6:43 right now where I'm at, and if I do the plaster, I'm gonna have to stop completely and let it all dry. So we're gonna keep moving forward, and what we're gonna do now is we're gonna work on making our floor all rubbly. We're not gonna glue it in, we're just gonna tear it apart, because I need to be able to get inside of there to paint and everything like that. This will be like the very, very last thing that goes on this piece. So we check our fitting. It fits awesomely. Now, zoom in just a little bit for you guys. So we've got broken wall here, broken wall here. Now in my mind, this section of the wall would have fallen in and taken this section of the wall out. So I need to draw. I don't want to go too far in because our pillar is right there. So we're gonna go like right here and then shoot across. Kind of just like that. And that's just a guideline to help us know where we need to tear things out. So now that we've got our little guideline, and you remember those pliers I told you to find a while ago? Well, they're going to be useful again. See, our floor is coming together. Let's see what it looks like here in the tower. Come down here on screen. So it's starting to look awesome. Starting to look like the wall actually took out that floor. And because we're gonna add all of these little broken bits of popsicle stick and balsa wood to these rubble piles, it's gonna make everything look like it's supposed to be there, and that's what we want. We want somebody who's looking at that to be like, yeah, that's pretty cool the way you made it look like it all fell apart. So that's what we're looking for. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do the next floor, do a little finishing touches on this floor, and then we'll come back to you. All right, so we got all of the floor stuff really mangled up. Now, one thing I did forget, and I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this, but I went in and we took our little X-Acto knife here, and I'll show you what I did. All I did was I took my knife and I ran it across the sides here, like that. Took some chunks off of this stuff, and that's gonna give the wood flooring a bit more texture instead of it just being straight lines, which during those, you know, the medieval times, wood planks weren't really perfect. But as usual, we're not really going for a realistic look here. I just want to do something that looks cool. So we also did that to our little wood beams that are going to be holding up the floor, and it tapered the edges and stuff like that. And we did it to those ones in there which was a pain in the butt. So I would recommend doing that before you glue those in. Now, I'm gonna show you how I'm going to tear this one up, because this one, let me move all this stuff out of the way. This beam is the one that goes right here, right up against all of this torn up wall. So it's gonna sit right here. Now, as you can see, I marked out where the beam touches the wall, because I don't want to tear that part up because the wall's still there. Also, we kind of need something to glue it to. So that should be sufficient enough to hold that in there. So we're gonna take our pliers and we're basically just going to pinch this and tear parts of it out. But be careful, because balsa wood is super soft and you'll rip this thing up right in half and then it'll be useless and we'll have to make a new one. So we're just gonna keep lightly picking at it till we get it to somewhere that we like it. And that is the basic of how we're going to make it look like this piece of wall, or this support beam, got roughed up when the wall fell in on it. So I'm gonna finish this up and then we'll be back on to the next step. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so now that we've got all of those beams and the floor textured up and taken care of, now we're gonna get into the one thing that I'm really dreading doing, and that's because it makes a huge mess. So this is what I use. I'm probably going to look into something a little bit different in the future, and that's because, if I can get this open, you see how watery that is? It's not really what we want. We want something that's something that we need to add water to smooth out, not necessarily something so watery like this. We're gonna give it a little stir here before we start using this, because there's water that settles at the top. So I tried this with my last piece and it worked. It does what it needs to do. Like I said, the only problem is it's really watery stuff. So I'm gonna try it with a brush this time and see if that doesn't help at all. And with this, we're wanting to avoid getting it on the walls. So if you do get some on the walls, you want to get it off of there as fast as you can with some a wet piece of paper towel. So let's do this here real quick, show you how this works. And we're just going to smooth this stuff on here. What we're trying to do is break up the creases that are going to be around the edges of this stuff where we glued them in. And that is pretty much it. And if you sand your styrofoam before you do this, then you don't have to worry about it being all weird and lumpy. So I'm going to finish the rest of that and clean it all off the walls before it gets stuck there and adds a texture we didn't intend to be there. And then we'll be back when that dries, and we'll talk a little bit about how we're going to paint this whole thing and start getting it ready for the more detailed work. So we'll see you guys in a bit. All right, guys, so we waited a couple of hours and now everything's nice and dry, which I was kind of surprised it only took a couple of hours. Then again, it is a very thin coat. And by the way, the whole paintbrush using the plaster, that didn't work. at all. So just use your hand, get in there, get messy. It'll be fun. So now we're gonna do our rubble bits, and I was practicing on my other piece, which, hold on a second. Here's what our other piece looks like. I mean, it looks pretty good, right? However, all of my rubble stuff, because I used regular PVA, didn't stick worth a crap. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start gluing all of that rubble stuff on, and I'm gonna show you how to do just one of the piles real quick, and then I'm gonna move on without you guys and get it all finished, because it's a pain to do this with the camera running. Not to mention, that's gonna turn this thing into like a 2-hour long episode, and nobody wants to watch a 2-hour long episode. So first off, we're gonna use tacky glue, not PVA. Tacky glue holds onto things a heck of a lot better. So let's get our tacky glue on here. And this stuff is easy to work with. We're just gonna basically move it around with our finger. But we need to get a bunch of it on there, because I want to make sure that this stuff stays. Remember all of our little wood bits and stuff? We're gonna place those first. So like one right there, and maybe one right here. That's it. We don't need too many, just a couple. And then we're gonna take all of our styrofoam and we're just gonna basically throw it at it. Push them in there so they stick. So that's about what your pile should look like. And then I've got some other aggregate that we're gonna use that's, I'm pretty sure I bought this at a hobby shop, and it's just like small aggregate or something like that. So, and then you want to go for basic full coverage on this. Push it in there so it doesn't fall. Should probably be using something to keep all this stuff off my desk, but whatever. Now I've got one other fine one that I'm gonna use. Just sprinkle it on there. Now, the last bit is just some sand, and that is going to fill up all of the dead space that we haven't put rubble onto. And that, because we're going to use this to base the rest of everything else other than the floor on the inside, it's all just kind of flow together, so it's going to look like it all belongs there. So I don't think you need me to show you how to dump sand on something, so I'm gonna move forward and we'll see you guys here in a bit. Alright, so here we are, done with the rubble finally, and I also put the sand on the rest of the base too. And I decided that these pieces were a little too flat, so I decided to put some rubble up on those too. And I did use tacky glue on this. However, I didn't use tacky glue on the basing part. I just used regular PVA, because You can smooth PVA out better with a brush and a little bit of water. So now we're gonna start doing our painting for this. And if you recall, I said I was gonna spray paint this. Well, I went out and I bought some spray paint. I bought Krylon, I believe, and I tested it out on my test piece that you guys have seen that I've been doing off camera. And don't buy Krylon paint and use it on XPS. It creates some weird plastic looking foam like coverage over the whole thing. Super strange. I've never seen anything like it. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to do all this by hand, which is fine. So I'm just gonna start with some, crappy acrylic cheap paint. I'm using a color called charcoal. Now I'm gonna take that and I'm going to paint all of our walls, our rubble piles, and really that's it. We're gonna kind of, stipple this stuff on there. Make sure that you add some water to this paint. It's gonna help get into the creases and the cracks and stuff like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. There's no special technique here. Just cover everything that would be stone in a gray color other than the floor, because we're gonna do the floor in like I think maybe a red tile or something like that, something to just give this piece a little bit of pop. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and when I'm done we'll come back and we'll talk about the next step. Okay guys, so here we are, done with everything gray. One thing I do want to mention is that because we used tacky glue and PVA on this, what's going to happen when you're painting it is it's going to rehydrate the glue. So once you've painted an area, move on. Even if you've missed some spots, you could always come back after it's dry. But if you're trying to paint it again after it's been wet for a little while, the glue is going to become rehydrated and you're just going to move everything around. I probably should have mentioned that beforehand, but it's not like you're step by step following along with me. I mean, really you can't unless you're like a super speedy buildy person. Anyways, so now we're going to move on to doing our wash, and we're going to do the wash on everything. Trying to avoid the dirt here. But if it gets onto the dirt, which it probably will because it's going to run off of our rubble piles and our walls and stuff and get into these corners and creases and everything like that, that's not a big deal. We can always fix that later. But for the most part, we'll try to avoid it. So really, it's just as simple as taking your wash and putting it on there. And ta-da! See, it flowed out over here. So anyways, I'm gonna do that to everything. I'm gonna let it dry and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright guys, so here we are. Wash is done and it got everywhere. So that's fun. Anyways, now what we're gonna do is we are going to do a heavy dry brush of our original stone color, just leaving all of this dark wash in all of the recessed areas. So now if you don't know what a heavy dry brush is, really it's having a little bit more paint in your brush than a dry brush, if that makes sense. So I'm not going to show you how to do that, and as soon as I get done with that, we'll move on to the next step, and we'll see you in a bit. Okay guys, so we're done with that. It makes a difference. You can see everything's not as dark. There's a little bit of highlighted tones in there now. I mean, it's a little hard to tell on the flatter surfaces, but you can definitely tell on the rubble piles. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go through and paint all of the wood pieces. So the pillars and all of the little wood bits that we've put in there. and I'm gonna paint them this earth brown color. And let's not forget about our floor pieces. We need to paint those as well. Now, because this is in like a frozen area, or used to be frozen area that was at once, you know, covered in snow, some of the wood is probably going to have like some algae and stuff on it. So I'm going to mix a little bit of this hunter green in with a lot of water after we get done painting all of the wood, and basically just kind of stipple it on in a couple of places, and also mix it in with the brown so it all looks like it flows together, a good smooth contrast between those two. So I'm gonna go ahead with that, and when I get done I'll come back and we'll talk about the next step. Okay guys, so we did all of the brown pieces now. Got them all painted and the ones inside of there. Now, I liked the way this turned out. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here. See how it's got some like green to it? A little bit of mossy color going on there on the wood. So, what I decided to do, because I liked that, and you probably can't see it because it's a word for it, faint, but I put it in the creases around all of this and some around the bottom here. It's really, really hard to see. You can see a little bit like right here, and I like the way that looked, so I kept going with that. And I did it around here a little bit, just places where, you know, water would collect and stuff like that. So now what I'm gonna do in the next step here is we're going to paint all of the facing stones for the doors and the windows. And I've already done one side, so this is how it's gonna turn out. Look very bright. I might try to darken that down a little bit by putting the wash back on it. Just very neatly putting the wash on it anyways. I don't want it to get everywhere. So I think with this lighter color it's actually going to help with the snow and stuff that we're going to put on here. I feel like it's going to make the piece feel cold. So I'm going to move on with that. I'm going to finish these pieces, and I think what we're going to do after that is I think we're going to work on the floor in here and get that painted up. Like I said, I think I'm gonna do a red color. I might think a little bit more about that, but I feel like the fact that everything is really dark and cold looking with all of the snow that we're gonna put on it, I think a red is gonna be a good color. A dark like rust red, and then maybe highlight the centers of the tiles or something like that. But for now, let's go ahead and do all these facing stones for the doors and the windows. So I'm gonna do that, and we'll be right back when I'm done. All right guys, we got that done, and now that they're all painted, I think it looks a lot better. Also, you may have noticed that I skipped a step. And if you've been watching the channel since the first video, you know that's pretty normal. So, the thing I forgot to do was we needed to dry brush on I used a vanilla cream is what I used. Now I chose a vanilla instead of like a tan color because, again, snow terrain. So all my dry brushing is really gonna help with all of that snowy effect and stuff like that. Everything's gonna kind of look frosted, and that's what we definitely want. So go ahead and do all that. And I didn't do that one, apparently. No, maybe I did. I don't know. It doesn't look like it's done, but okay. So now we're gonna move on. And we're gonna do the floor. Now, one thing with the floor is I wasn't really sure how I was gonna make those tiles look worn and not so perfect. But something that I noticed when I was looking at them, because we've put the plaster on there, we've gotten all kinds of PVA and nasty crap and our wash and everything all over this. It's hydrated all of that, and it's kind of dried in a weird way, leaving some parts like raised and little bubbles and stuff like that. So that is actually going to help us out, because this floor is not going to look perfect by any means. So I am going to do a red rust color for the base coat on the floor, and then I'm gonna take this true red color, water it down a lot. I mean a lot, like barely any type of paint. So once we get it all covered in this rust red, what we're gonna do is take a small brush and just kind of dab in the center of each one of these floor tiles to give it just a little bit of depth, I guess, on a flat piece. So I'm gonna do that. I'll be back regardless of how it looks, and we'll talk a little bit more. Okay, so we got the floor done. I'm not exactly happy with it. I don't know if you're gonna be able to tell on the camera, but it kind of just turned into a pool of red. I dry brushed the crap out of this with a bright red to try to pick up some of those lines. Apparently I need to be laying tile for a living because they're right next to each other with no gap whatsoever. There's really nothing we can do about it now. I wish I had done something different, and maybe I'll think on it and see if I can't figure something out, but that definitely won't be in this video. So we have two things left that we need to do here. We need to redo our dirt color on our board to get rid of all this nastiness, and then we finally get to glue in the floors. It's finally starting to come together. I'm super excited about this. And then the very last step is going to be putting the snow flocking on this piece and making it, really bringing everything together. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do the ground, get that repainted. I'm also going to do a very light dry brushing of a tan color to bring out the dirt here, and then I'm gonna glue the floors in. That part I'm pretty excited about, because this thing hasn't had floors in it except for in my head this entire build. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that stuff, and I'll come back and we'll go into doing the snow flocking, which I am gonna do more of an in-depth piece on this video on how to do the snow flocking. So we'll be right back when I'm done. Alright guys, so we need the final touches here, and that is going to be to do all of our snow on this piece of terrain. Now, one thing I have talked about in my first video, which we'll go ahead and throw a link up over here somewhere. The first thing I talked about with snow terrain in that video is people that do wargaming terrain and they do snow base, they usually use baking soda as a filler, so you're not wasting a bunch of your flocking here. However, I didn't really like the way that looked, and I wanted to try to do something a little different. Now, I don't mind spending the money on this stuff as long as it's gonna look good. I mean, if the baking soda had worked out and it would have looked better than what I'm doing with this, I would have used that, but I wasn't a big fan of it. I don't know, it was kind of hard to work with in the fact that it got really droopy and kind of like wanted to just flatten out and go wherever it wanted to, and I didn't like that. So I did test this snow stuff that I'm about to make on a couple of 3D printed little statues here. Now, this is what we're going for. You see how like it's all kind of irregular and sticking up in places, and you know, kind of what you would think snow would actually look like, or at least exaggerated reality kind of snow situation here. So this one is the one we're looking for, where I'm going to show you how to mix up some stuff like this. This is the other one that I did, and this one's got a little bit more PVA glue to it. You see how everything just kind of flattened itself out over time while it was drying. I don't like the way this looks. This is basically exactly like the baking soda. I mean, if I was wanting this kind of look, I would just use my baking soda and we would just cover it with snow flocking and just call it done. But that's not what I want. I want that exaggerated texture to really look like, wanting is for the snow to be like jaggedy, sticking up, kind of almost like freshly fallen snow. So I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. And really, it's super simple. Just get some of your snow flocking here. You're gonna need quite a bit. I mean, I'm not gonna go too crazy on this. And then just dump your PVA glue into this. Just not coming out fast enough. Okay, let's try that. Just get yourself something to stir all this together, and it's gonna get clumpy really quick. Now, in order for us to put this on the terrain, those statues, I just kind of like tried to paint it on there, and that didn't work so well. I had to fight it to get it to stick, and I wasn't a fan of that either, because I want to place it where I want to place it. I don't want to have to mess around with it and try to get it to go where it wants to go and not where I want it to go. So we're gonna try something a little different. I'm gonna put some tacky glue where I want the snow terrain to go. So this is how you kind of want it to look. You want it to be able to stand on its own. If you've put too much PVA glue in it and you slap it to the side of the cup, it's gonna start running down and eventually will flatten out in the bottom of the cup, and that's not what we want, because that eventually, once you put it on the terrain, it's just gonna flatten itself out over time. So we want something that's got some stability to it. It's just gonna stand on its own. Now, I'm gonna take just a little bit of tacky glue here, and let's move this into camera. Now I'm just going to spread this out where I want this snow flocking to sit. A little bit like that. Try to do an irregular pattern if you can. This stuff's kind of hard to work with sometimes. And because there is PVA glue inside of that snow flocking, it is going to stick. After a while, it will start to settle and the PVA glue will go to the bottom of the flocking. But I kind of want it to stick now where I want it. Like, I don't want to have to play with it. That's too much. Yes, it's much better. And the best way to get that good lumpy looking texture to it is just to kind of dab your popsicle stick or whatever it is that you're using inside of there. Move it around and stuff like that, and it will create those lumps and stuff like that. So that's what we're going for right there. it's got some texture to it and everything like that. Now, one other thing that I do want to do is I am going to take a little bit of my flocking just straight out of the can. Just going to take a small pinch and just sprinkle it over the top, which is going to help with that as well. Now, if you don't have any of this snow flocking, this is Woodland Scenic. Pretty sure it cost me about $12 to $15 to have it shipped to the States. So not really that bad, but I mean, if you're on a budget, it's probably not something you're gonna want to do, which then I would go to the baking soda situation and do stuff like that as the main filler for this stuff, and then sprinkle your snow flocking on top of it. It looks okay. I mean, it's not my favorite look for the snow. This one is by far my favorite. I like the way this looks, and I'm okay with spending a little bit extra money to get a piece of terrain that looks awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish up snow flocking this entire piece, and I'm pretty sure that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. We'll hit the exit, and we'll talk a little bit about this piece. Alright guys, so there you have it. Hope you stuck around for this one. I know it was a long video. End result turned out pretty good. Final thoughts, really. I'm not happy with the floor. Probably going to try to end up fixing that at some point. But those pictures will end up being on my Facebook page, so if you haven't gone and found that and following that, that's where those will be here in the next coming week. So one thing that I need to talk to you guys about is next Tuesday I'm not going to have a build video. I've got some stuff going on that I need to take care of, so it'll be about 2 weeks before we get into another build, and I haven't really decided on what I'm going to do for that build just yet. However, it's not going to be something big like this. Probably going to do something that is a little out of my comfort zone, something I haven't worked with yet, but I've been wanting to for a while. So the gears are turning. I got ideas for next week. Also, one more thing, the rubble piles, wasn't too impressed with them. I think they look really good. But don't get me wrong, I like that. But I should have gone for more of a realistic, like blown out kind of rubble that should have been all over the base and not just compartmentalized in certain locations. So in the future, that's probably something that I'll do for other ruined buildings. Like I said, if you guys want to see me build some more ruined buildings, or maybe a building that isn't so falling apart, such as this one, something with, you know, a roof that's like caved in or something like that, let me know in the comments below so we can make plans to do that. So as always, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, hit that little notification icon so you don't miss anything, and we'll see you guys this time in 2 weeks.